All right, hello everyone. It's Sybil Starr here to talk about the Libra full moon that is happening on, let's see, April 7th at 7:34 p.m. Pacific time. Now there it is, right? It's at 18 degrees of Libra, and we're going to be talking about that just a little bit later. But that's the most important part of this video. But there are so many things happening right now, and I do want to talk a little bit about the virus, again, the astrology of the virus, so that we understand its teachings, and what maybe what it is about, what is the teaching, what is it bringing. And there are some incredible celestial events happening right now. And that's really where I want to start, because we are definitely in some changing times. The First Nations people all believe that we have started the Great Turning. I don't know if they all have, but many that I have heard speak really believe that the Great Turning has really started in earnest, and that we are in the midst of the shift, and that Mother Earth is moving into higher dimensions, and we are moving with her. And we're going through the eye of the needle to make that shift with her, to align our energies with Mother Earth. And so, of course, it's showing us all the places where we are out of alignment. And but the first thing I want to talk about is this full moon is in Libra, whose ruler is Venus, the beautiful planet Venus. And she is so bright in the sky right now. If you haven't seen her, be sure and go out and absorb some of her beauty, because she's getting ready to go retrograde. And so she's slowing down, and she's just very bright and high in the sky. So you can see her for quite a while. She's in the sign of Gemini. But the rare thing of what is happening, which I've never seen before, it has probably happened, but I just haven't been aware of it, I guess, is her conjunction with the Pleiades, and with a good camera, apparently, probably a professional one. You can see her, and I want to show you this picture just because it's so beautiful. So I'm going to screen share here. Screen share, and all right. And here she is, okay? This is a picture taken by Stefano Maraggi Photography. So was a professional photographer, and I'm grateful to Stefano for sharing it online so that people could see the great beauty. But this is Venus right here. See how bright she is? And here they are, the seven sisters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's the constellation of the Pleiades. And it's just a rare event. And, there's many, some believe that what's called the central sun of our cosmos here is there in the Pleiades, Alcyone. There are many who believe that we have some star ancestors from the Pleiades, that they were, and as well as other star nations such as Sirius and Arcturus, came and star-seeded the human race, and that was our big leap in consciousness. Now, I don't know that that's true, but that is part of many people's cosmology. I'm going to say some native peoples, as well as Egyptian. Many, they really believe their ancestors came from Sirius. And so, but here are the Pleiades, and the Pleiades, what they really represent are love. I feel like, and Venus is one of the great feminine archetypes, great goddess, great mother. And I think it's reminding us that this is like an omen, that she is here, that we are always held in the love of the mother. And even when times get really challenging, which they are right now, to remember that. And she sends us these signs so that we can remember. So anyway, that is one of the things that is going on right now. Another really incredible celestial event is that we have a comet that has come into our solar system. And comets are kind of rare to come in, so close. We did have one in the 90s, the Hale-Bopp. but this comet is, well, I guess I wouldn't say they're rare, but they're auspicious because they have a certain timing. And this particular comet has not been seen since the age of the Egyptians, 5,500 years ago. And I'm going to be talking more about this comet, but they're very auspicious and they're often bringers of omens. And so it's just entered into our solar system, and it's expected to leave on May 23rd. And then the third thing I want to talk about just before I get into all of the astrology is how we're taking big leaps into the Aquarian age and what that might mean for us. Okay. All right. So to begin with, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the virus. Those of you that have seen my new moon in Aries video, I talked a lot about it. So you might want to review that, but I am going to talk a little bit about it again tonight because I feel like, as we go along, we're learning more. There's more to be understood. And so I do want to share that I did do a little research, look back at some different pandemics in the past to see if there were any similar astrological aspects. And I looked at four of them, and there was an interesting one, a Jupiter-Neptune aspect. One, there was a conjunction, there was a square, there was a trine, there's a sextile. So there's all kinds of things, okay? And not all kinds of things. This aspect is really strong. And they're usually pretty benefic, Jupiter and Neptune together. Okay, but so I'll just give you a little information. So Jupiter is, he is the biggest planet in our solar system, and he has a lot to do with expansion. Anything he touches, he expands. And he is associated with pandemics. And apparently the movement of Jupiter and pandemics, they have noticed there is that is always there, okay, during a pandemic. And the Greeks believed that Zeus, who was the Greek name for Jupiter, the king of the gods, sent plagues for bad leadership. And just so you know, it's just kind of funny that it, kind of works out that way, because I certainly feel like that is, I don't know that that is the case here, but the Greeks certainly believed that, okay? Neptune is the energetic web of life. It is the place where we all connect, where we are all connected. It's the field. And so things travel in that field. We put things, we are that field. We are creating that field all the time. And so if anything is showing us how we are all connected, it is this virus. And it is also the planet that often brings an element of sacrifice. And sacrifice means to make sacred. And there are certainly some people whose lives are being sacrificed in this pandemic. And Neptune is about compassion. It is divine love. It is the great heart opener. And I have read that one reason we incarnate is to have our hearts broken over and over so that they really open. And when they are open is when we feel compassion. And so sometimes it is through really challenging events that our hearts do open, and we do see our hearts opening to one another again. Those places where we were so divided and angry, Neptune is the great is unity. It is bringing us into unity consciousness, helping us remember that we are all one. But it is also the planet of illusion and delusion. And that's also in our field. And there is a new piece that has really come into my conscious awareness. Neptune is the world of the invisible. And so there is an invisible problem we are having. And I do not believe we live in a random universe, that everything impacts everything else. And it is the question of the 5G technology. And did it or did it not play a role in this pandemic? Well, for one thing, the pandemic started in Wuhan, China, where 5G was first rolled out. And it was the first place in the country in the world that it was rolled out. Okay, and there have been a lot of concerns from a lot of people about unhealthy levels of radiation that this technology puts out. There have been protests everywhere. I live in California. I know the cities by me, Sebastopol, Petaluma, many cities in Marin. Mill Valley actually passed a resolution to not allow 5G in. And I just recently read that Switzerland, Brussels, even Boris Johnson, before he went to the hospital, um, halted any further 5G. And I don't know if it was in London or if it was all of the UK. Santa Barbara, California Council has halted its implementation. So there is a lot of legitimate concerns about it, and I think we just really need to look at it. And how is it playing a role? Well, from my understanding is that it damages the cells and makes them more vulnerable, makes them weaker. And some might even say poisons the cells, and which makes the cells more vulnerable to pathogens of all kinds, viruses, bacteria, everything. And that seems to be the case, and it seems like this is something we need to look at, whether or not. And as I get more into Aquarius and Uranus, I'll explain astrologically why it's really up, not just the Neptune piece of our field being infected, but the teachings around Aquarius. Okay. So the other planets I wanted to talk about just a little bit is the big Saturn-Pluto conjunction that happened in January. That is another piece we have known, or this particular aspect often brings big changes, and some of the things it has to do with is responsible use of power and resources, corruption, decay in our government. Well, let me just go back a bit. They're meeting up in Capricorn. So first off, Pluto is the planet that brings to the surface things that have been hidden. Okay, whatever has been hidden, and it often shows us what is rotten, what is decayed, because it's part of the composting process, and bringing that out to make fertile ground for the new, but recognizing that is decayed. And often in Pluto events, it's a place we have to feel our way through. You can't think your way through it. So it often touches us in places where we hold certain emotions that need to come to the surface. But it is about death, transformation, and rebirth, whatever it touches, okay? And Saturn is the planet that has to do, he's called the Lord of Karma. So it's like, so Pluto is the god of the underworld and the god of death, transformation, and rebirth. And Saturn is the god of karma. And so we reap what we sow. For every action, there is a consequence. It is a planet that brings about maturity by being held accountable for what we do. And we're being held accountable right now for looking at what we have done to our world, how we have poisoned ourselves and our environment. And as we let it come into our conscious awareness, then it allows us to make the necessary changes that we need to make to move on. It isn't like we just need to wallow in our mess, but it's acknowledging the mess that we're in and making different choices. And it also, Saturn also rules consensus reality. The part of us that, not the part of us, what we have all agreed upon is reality. Reality is so much bigger than what we agree that it is. But as a civilization, as a culture, this is what we agree is true. This is what we agree is not true. And so when they come together, it is a transformation in consensus reality. And Saturn also brings up fear. And this brings us to another really big piece of this coronavirus. And, the native peoples are talking about it, the Kogi, the Hopi, and even just science supports it. That fear makes us vulnerable. Fear also physiologically emits different chemicals and hormones that weaken our cells. So the more we stay in fear, the actual weaker and more vulnerable we become to this virus. And the Kogi say that this virus is, fear is actually its food. It's empowered by it. It makes it stronger. It makes us weaker and it's stronger. So it's so important to recognize when fear is coming up. And I'll be talking about, well, the antidote to fear is love. It's always love. Okay. And the Kogi also say love is the shield. And as we know, um, as fear emits a chemical into our cells, so does love. I went to see my dentist today, and he talked really a lot about it. He's in Sebastopol, and he's kind of an alternative dentist. And the Kogi say that you know love is our shield. And as the dentist talked, he said, when you're in love, when those oxytocin is just really flowing, you really do have a shield, a physiological shield against illness. And so it makes your cells stronger. It makes your cells stronger. It feeds your cells. It makes them stronger. And so it's like, how do you approach this with love and not fear? Well, one is to be calm. It is to find that place of inner calm and contentment within yourself. Okay. Um, and it is also just, I think about, well, one of the ways I think that is really effective in dealing with this is group prayer and meditation, and putting love out into that field. That's where we meet that fear, is where we can put that love in a way that creates a shield, not only for ourselves, but for our world. Okay, as this fear is coming up. Because this coronavirus it's activating fear within us. So we need to deactivate it with that love. And just in my own world, I recognize places where I might judge other people. That is certainly, or judge myself. Self-judgment is always one of the places where fear resides, when we're judging ourselves or judging others. And just stopping that and recognize the story that is coming up, so that you can neutralize it and hold it in your heart and say, how can I approach this with love? I realize fear is coming up, and how do I neutralize this? And it is just holding yourself and others in that place of love, and where they are and where you are. Okay. All right. So, and then of course, another thing that is happening, and I do want to bring up the last time Saturn and Pluto met, because I think it's so significant. And that is in 1982. Because Saturn and Pluto meet about 3 times a century. Okay. And so they met in 1982 in Libra, and Libra is all about relationship. And in 1982, we were dealing with the AIDS virus. Okay, so it was another virus. And so it's kind of different kinds of viruses. And this is a year where we're having all kinds of many different patterns meeting up at the same time. Okay, so it makes it really powerful. And so in 1982, we were dealing with the AIDS crisis, and many people died from this AIDS crisis, and it was very painful, but it also opened a lot of hearts. Okay, and look where we are today. There has been a transformation of consensus reality about homosexuality, and being able to recognize that people love who they love. Okay, and that love is love, and that's all that's important. And so that's because we have gay marriages legal in all 50 states. Who would have guessed that in 1982? So who can guess what is coming out of this, with our hearts open and connecting with each other in such a deep way? Okay. All right. And the other thing, of course, is recognizing the carbon pollution is becoming so clear. Mother Earth couldn't be speaking any louder. It is a cleansing and a purifying time. So many places, the shots of LA that people haven't seen in 30 years, of Kathmandu, of Beijing, of Italy, of you know, all these different places where the smog is just so much better. It is about the air quality. And I feel like this particular um, situation is so much about recognizing the poison in our air, okay, because it's all about respiratory, okay. All right. So, and also nature, and Mother Nature is our healer. We need to be there. And I hope you live somewhere where you can go outside. They've closed so many of the parks here in Northern California and Santa Rosa, where I live. But I have found some places to walk and be out in nature and to be alone. I'm still doing social distancing. You know, I'm not walking with people, but I am out in nature, and that does feel so good. And we've just got to get out. Okay. And especially out of your apartment, if you have a lot of wireless and technology, we've got to really learn how to live with this more safely. Okay. All right. So now to the full moon. The full moon is in Libra at 18 degrees of Libra. It's opposite the sun at 18 degrees of Aries, and it happens on April 7th at 7:34 p.m. Pacific. Libra, of course, is about relationship, and so many of you that are in relationships know that you're getting some big relationship teachings if you're living at home with your partner in social isolation. So, you know, it's fun. It's not fun, it's funny in a way. So, yeah, so this Libra moon is very much about really looking at those relationships, you know, coming up around that. It's about finding balance, um, balance between self and other. And it's about Ma'at. Ma'at is the sign most closely associated with Libra, and that is about cosmic order. You know, there's so many ways we're being shown trying to be pulled back into cosmic order and into truth. That's what cosmic order is. It is truth. And the full moon shines brightly on on the issues of you know, whatever is showing up at this full moon. And I just wanted to share the Sabian symbol, and I doesn't look like I have my book here, so I'll have to paraphrase it. It has to do with robbers being seen and coming out into the light, and it's pretty wild. And that at this particular moment, that the Sabian symbol, and the Sabian symbol is that where a woman saw a vision for every degree of the zodiac, and this was the one she saw for 19 degrees of Libra, which robbers coming out of hiding into and being seen. That's what it says, coming out of hiding and being seen. And there are so many things that are happening. There's politically, and by the way, if you're interested politically, I do a show tomorrow, not tomorrow, on Wednesday at 11 o'clock called Political Star Talk, where I really look at the politics of the astrology and talk about it more so than the spiritual aspects. And so I'll be talking a lot there. So tonight I'll just mention them, but there's some really underhanded, sneaky stuff happening that they're just blatantly doing. Our politicians are. And so in Wisconsin, the primaries, the governor there has tried to halt the primaries, to have them rescheduled till after the virus, after the quarantine. But the Republican legislature and Supreme Court has blocked that, and it's even gone to the Supreme Court about the mail-in votes that the mail-in votes had to be in by a certain time, when most of the Wisconsins haven't even received their mail-in votes. So Wisconsin will be going to the polls. I'm not sure what day that is, but it might be what is today? It might be tomorrow, or it might be next week. I'm not sure when it is. But anyway, and then of course I also read where they're pushing through the pipelines now. They know that people can't come out and protest, and so there's a lot of things being done while people are under quarantine and not able to go out and protest. So and the other thing is this full moon is in conjunct Neptune, and Neptune is that planet of illusion and delusion. And so it's like there's I'm going to say there's going to be a lot of corruption unmasked in this time period, but the question is, will the people believe it? You know, Neptune is all about misinformation, and this is a time of such incredible misinformation. It's just so important to research and follow up on everything that you see and read. If it feels funny at all, if anything just doesn't feel right, or even just check it out. You know, check it. There's a lot of fact-checking organizations online, and it's really important to do that because we are just being fed a lot of misinformation at this time. And so, yes, and then of course the ruler is Venus, and as I talked about her being conjunct the Pleiades, it is so much about finding that calm in the center of the storm. That's really, you know, Venus is very much about finding inner serenity, so is Libra. So finding that place of inner balance, inner serenity, because that is the way we have to march forward. If we march forward from a place of fear and anxiety, we make bad choices. We need to be centered within ourselves. And the world right now is not centered. So we need to find that center within ourselves. And I think those group meditations and prayers where we connect with each other, kind of like the redwood trees whose roots all, you know, hold each other up. That's how they get so big and strong. And I feel like that connection, we do need that connection, okay, to help us hold the center. I think that's what that's about. Another thing I wanted to talk about at this full moon is the role of the divine feminine. It is just so strong. As I talked about Venus and the Pleiades, but there's a few more asteroids that I just want to mention here briefly. Eris is conjunct the sun in Aries, and I've talked about Eris before, and in Aries, they're both warriors, but Eris is the feminine warrior. And you know, the feminine warrior has not had a seat at the table in a very long time. In Greece, she was called the goddess of discord. Well, if you didn't have a seat at the table, you might be a little upset too. You know, they didn't want to, you know, invite her to anything because she always upset things because she wanted a seat at the table, you know. Well, the feminine warrior has returned. And this new moon is in a square to an Athena, Jupiter, and Pluto conjunction. And Athena is another warrior goddess, but she is one who knew how to win without war. Okay, she was the goddess of strategy, and Jupiter was her father. He was, and you know, there is that ancient myth that, you know, when Jupiter was told, or Zeus was told, that Metis, who was the mother of Athena, was with child, a prophecy came that this child would overthrow him. And so he swallowed Metis, okay, whole, so that this child could not be born. But Athena came out. She came out of his forehead. She had an axe, and you know, he had a terrible headache, and you know, there she was. But as they say, the prophecy has not been fulfilled, because it actually will be oh, I know what it was. So he let her live because, oh, you know, she was only a girl. What could a girl do? And so the prophecy really is that the daughters of the patriarchy are the ones that will overthrow the patriarchy. It is the women. And the Pluto combined with this is powerful women or feminists. And you know, there has been a passing of the staff in the Mayan tradition from the men to the women. And the Mother Earth is calling for the women to stand up. In all the, you know, in a lot of the indigenous and different kinds of prayer groups, women are getting that message everywhere. And in fact, it is true. Mother Earth is really calling on the women to stand up. Now, the next piece I want to go to is really, really significant too, and that is the Aquarius piece. So the planet Saturn has moved into Aquarius. Saturn has been in his own sign of Capricorn for the last 2.5 years, or 2 years and plus. And for 3 months, he's going to be in Aquarius and then retrograde back into Capricorn, and then go forward again back into Aquarius at the end of the year, where he meets up with Jupiter for an every 20-year conjunction, which I'm not going to talk about tonight, but is very powerful. So basically, we're just simply taking some big leaps into the Aquarian energy. And so what is Aquarius? Aquarius has to do with collaboration, thinking for yourself, intuition, being inventive, original, humane. It has a concern for the greater good. It's community oriented, systems oriented, future oriented. It is the sign of the people. When Aquarius comes around, it's that remembering that the power is with the people. Is when the people are no longer, well, I'm not going to say no longer afraid, because it is about being afraid, but walking through your fears, okay? And recognizing that, you know, things must be done now. And it's also about technology. It's about right use of technology. The symbol for Aquarius, it is the ancient symbol for water, but it's also the symbol for electricity and for energy. Okay, that's what it looks like. And so it's and it's also associated with Atlantis, okay, and their use of technology. And so the shadow of Aquarius, one of them, is about the dangers of technology. And I have been reading this book called The Invisible Rainbow. I've just started it. I've only read a few chapters, but it's really interesting because he talks about when electricity was first discovered to be able to be used outside of the body. I guess maybe because, you know, we have our own electricity in our body. We're an electrical system. But when we have too much electricity in our environment, our own electrical system goes haywire and we get actually poisoned by it. Okay. And so this is, and so anyway, as I was saying, so he talks about going back and studying when it was first used, you know, for things other than healing, put it that way, for batteries and, you know, radio waves and different kinds of things, and how that there were physical symptoms when someone was really sensitive to electricity, and it would show up in their body. And one of the ways was an influenza, but a lot of it sounded like chronic fatigue to me. Okay, the way that the symptoms were combined with an occasional influenza type response. But there was a point at which science, there was two different people that had two different theories, and one was the theory of how to use it in a way that is in alignment with our body. And the other person had a theory that it had no impact whatsoever on our bodies, anything that was done outside of our bodies. And that is the direction electricity went. And so there is, I feel like as we move more and more into the age of Aquarius, we are going to be using technologies, higher technologies. They're here, they're there, they're here. We need to learn how to use them safely. We may need to learn new ways of obtaining and creating radio waves or whatever we need to do, or just simply ways of protecting our bodies. Because my understanding is something like 5G actually pulls, well, I'm not going to say because my understanding may be wrong, so I'm not going to go there. But it is with these different places saying no 5G, it is making me really sit up and pay attention. There is something to this. And the fact that this virus started in Wuhan, where 5G was first rolled out in the whole world. And they say it takes about 6 months for the cumulative effects to show up, however they're going to show up. Okay. And so, and it just simply, that combined with the fear makes our cells really weak and vulnerable to these different pathogens. That's how I'm understanding it. Okay. All right. And the other thing is, Aquarius being associated with Atlantis and technology, it's like we're getting a second chance of how, we're not a chance, it's coming around again to learn right use of technology. Okay, because we know that was the problem there. And so how do we do this? And so it's to educate ourselves. And you know, Aquarius is a bit of a heretic. You know, he's going to question everything. Aquarius asks us to think for yourself, to question everything, to take nothing on face value, to do your own research and check things out for yourself. Okay, and they don't make it easy. And so then Mars is also in Aquarius, and uh, Mars is the warrior. It's come on this full moon. It's exactly square the planet Uranus, which brings change. And it feels to me like with this, one of the pieces of the ways this may be showing up is as um, um, these. The corruption of our government and our world, and just so many things we have been told. It's like as we take this downtime, not only is it a pause and a reset for us internally to align and do our inner work, it's also a time to pay attention to the bigger picture and what's really happening. Okay, in our world in so many places, and doing that research to find out the truth. And Aquarius has a lot to do, and Uranus both have a lot to do with revolution, with uprisings. But Uranus is definitely about change. Okay, the inequities in our system are just, and the faults and the cracks are just showing up, and it's about grassroots movements. That's what I'm seeing here. It is about grassroots movements coming together, and even though we can't meet right now, we will be at some point, and we can start organizing online because we've got stuff coming up that we're going to need to deal with. Okay, and it's also trine Venus. So there's a lot here about solidarity, about standing in alignment and cohesion and unity, standing in unity with our fellow brothers and sisters. That's a very Aquarian kind of an energy. That is the way we move through this, is with each other, connected with each other, supporting each other. And as Bernie says, it's not me, it's us. It is a time when the power of the people is coming into our conscious awareness. There is a whole lot of us. Okay, and changes are coming. And of course there's also Mother Earth and climate change is, all of this is playing into it. It's not just the virus. There's she is just like saying, are you listening? Do I have to shake you some more? Do I need to keep shaking you? Wake up. We talked about the human impact, and really rethinking our choices of how we move forward. And I love this quote here. It says, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but building the new. And that's exactly right. The old is falling apart. Okay. It is falling apart. It's trying to, it's built on a decaying foundation. And so we need to really focus on building the new and moving forward, even though there's challenges and obstacles. It's coming, and it may not come immediately, but it's coming. And to just throw that out there too, there's always that potential for this opportunistic power grab and an attempt at authoritarian rule. Just to say that, because it's also, I feel like this is a big piece of what's happening. But I also see us moving forward, meeting these challenges as they come. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the comet itself. Oh my God, the comet is just amazing. Comets are harbingers of change. They bring omens and signs. The ancients saw it as harbingers of things like plagues and floods and fires and all kinds of things. Basically, the stuff we're already seeing. Okay, but it also can be an omen of influential leaders dying. A comet came before Julius Caesar died, just before Alexander the Great died. And just so you know, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of Britain, is now in ICU with this coronavirus. And I think it's probably not too out of reality to think that there might be maybe some more people that might, and I pray he makes it through it. But I'm going to say with these kind of omens, it makes me think that, there's a possibility he won't, and maybe some others as well. And this comet is in our solar system from now until May 23rd, and you can see it in the sky between, let's put it this way. I don't know how visible it's going to be to the naked eye. There's different theories. Some believe that yes, it will be. Some believe, say, just some binoculars, you can see it. I'm going to get myself some for sure. And you can see it. It's between Venus, and Venus is very bright. You can't miss Venus. And the Big Dipper, Ursa Major. And most people know where Ursa Major is. If you can find those two, look in the sky and you will see it. Okay. Its name is Atlas. And who Atlas was a Greek character who was a Titan who held up the pillars of the sky. Without him holding up the pillars, heaven and earth would come crashing together, basically. So he is a force of nature. You know, the Greeks, of course, always put kind of a terrible story on many of theirs, that he got into a fight with Zeus, and this was his punishment, you know, was to carry the earth on his shoulders for the rest of his life. But there is another aspect. The Greeks took this character, Atlas, directly from the Egyptians. They had someone named Shu, S-H-U, who was the god who kept Nut, the sky, and Geb, the earth, separated, because the sky and the earth were so in love, they were constantly making love. And so Ra, the sun god, said, you know, we've got to change this. And so he put Shu there, and what it often means is, or first off, Shu represents the air, the atmosphere, as well as light, not fire, but the light that comes from the sun. Okay. And so on one hand, it is bringing attention to our atmosphere, to our air. Yeah, because he's a god. He's not a god of air. He is the force of nature. He is air. Okay, he is air, and he is our atmosphere. And the other is that he allows the sunlight to come in, the light of the sun, which is consciousness. So it goes along with so many of the other prophecies and teachings that we are moving into higher states of consciousness, and higher dimensions. But we have to deal with our air. You know, our air is polluted, and it's invisibly polluted as well as visibly polluted with carbon, and really paying attention to that. And he often brings in storms and dryness, both. He brings in first heat and then storms. And then he's also known as he who rises up. Okay. And there's so much about this happening here that is about rising up. It's about the rising up of the human spirit, is how I see it. Many of our indigenous peoples believe, like I said, that we are in the midst of the great turning, that we are moving in the direction forward, and there isn't, we have challenges along the way, and this is one of them. And if there were just a few bullet points from this, I would just say to remember that love is our shield, and that love heals, and that fear, that the coronavirus is empowered by fear. And fear is one of those things that emits things into our cells that actually damages our cells and makes them more vulnerable to this virus. But love is our shield, and love emits hormones and chemicals that make our cells healthy and protect ourselves against it. And when we have prayer and meditation in group meditations and put that love out into the field, it is a shield for all of us. Okay, it's really important to do that. And I think it's also so important as we enter the age of Aquarius to educate ourselves about the truth of what is actually in our air. You know, the radio waves, the radar. When every pandemic that has happened, there is a man who went back and saw a different something in our electrical field occurred, like in the Spanish flu of 1918 is when the radio waves went up. Radar went up in the 1940s, and there was a pandemic then. And he's gone through each time of something that has happened that has caused a disturbance in the electrical field, and has then, what it has done, it has made people more vulnerable to pathogens because it damages the cells. And I think ultimately sometimes we, and some people just never really recover. In this book, he talked about those that are electrical sensitive, are people who can tell what's happening with the weather. And the other piece is that this 5G apparently really attaches to metal in our bodies. And you know, metal is a conductor, and it really exaggerates the electrical effect. So you know, any metal in our body, vaccines, all of these different things, it really exaggerates the effect. So really learning about that, but knowing that we are held to trust, that we are held in the arms of the mother, and as we ride this wave, um, just to that it is trust that allows us to ride the wave. And that's what I see. And wishing you all a great couple of weeks. I'll be back again in 2 weeks with the new moon. And if you want to see my political show, it is called Political Star Talk on Third Eye Radio. And I will have it posted on my Star Nation Oracle page if you want to either listen in or listen after the fact. All right. Wishing you all the best. Good night.